Hey everybody, I am here with some notes on week 7 for you. Let's see how fast I can do this for you. First of all, I want to just comment on somebody's comment. I can't remember who said it, but somebody was saying something about thinking that we can't trust the news at all anymore. And I guess what I want to say about that is we can trust some of the news outlets. We can specifically trust the ones that pay journalists to check facts, and we should not trust those who don't. Without any further ado, I'm going to leave for you a link in the notes below this video with some guide to how to tell whether something is fake news or is real, journalistically checked, evidence-supported news. And it's pretty thorough, and if you haven't read something like that, you might be surprised at some of the steps that they give you. You might have thought of some of them, but not all. So take a look at that, because we really do need to rely on our fact checkers, our journalistic fact checkers, to go in and double check what our government and others are telling us. So we don't want to write off all media. We want to support the ones who are doing it right. Okay, there's this whole idea of public right to know, and when you were talking about WikiLeaks and also Daniel Ellsberg, this idea of the public right to know came up. Patricia discussed it, for example, and she felt that that we do, as citizens, have a right to know what the government is withholding from us. But then Angela mentioned that complete transparency would render certain deals nearly impossible to make. I can think of other times when the government needs to withhold information from the public. For example, if the government knows about a potential terrorist plot, it doesn't want to tip off the terrorists, it wants to catch them. But at other times, deception really seems to be for the purpose of keeping the public in the dark when the administration is doing something politically unpopular, like sending consultants to foreign countries who are really special forces guerrillas who are participating in war. But by calling them consultants, a euphemism, they make us think that we're just down there having meetings. Or, when President Bush began his shock and awe campaign, the second President Bush, I remember General Rumsfeld telling the American people that we would be using the Saudi Arabian airfields as a military base. All the while, it turns out that the Saudis had told us no. So ultimately, we did cut a very expensive deal with Saudi Arabia to use their airfield, but it might not have been possible. So why were they telling us it was happening before they knew? I don't even understand that. What did they think the public would say if they thought we were having trouble getting the Saudi airfield? I don't even know. I think what I'm going to do is give you an extra credit opportunity to come up with a rule about when it's ethical for the government to withhold information from the public and when there is a right to know. And for fun, I'm going to give you a link from Hamilton. If you haven't seen it, you've probably heard the music, and there's a song that seems to apply here. Okay, then Sam noted, and actually several of you noted, that Ellsberg's goals seemed a whole lot clearer than Julian Assange's WikiLeaks goals. And what I am wondering, just from reading you guys' posts, is how important do you think Assange's motives are when you try to decide whether WikiLeaks actions are appropriate and ethical? I'm not going to discuss that, but I'm going to ask you to think about it. And if you are interested in Julian Assange and more information about WikiLeaks, I'm going to give you a bunch of interesting links below the video that will take you to information about what Julian Assange has said himself about what he really wants to accomplish. And I don't know if it will surprise you, or in this day and age of Russia trying to take down America by hack, it might not surprise you at all. Okay, Connor raised some really interesting, conflicting deontological issues. He was talking about whether Ellsberg's duty to the president, country, and his employer are outweighed by his principles. And he was also asking if the leadership of our nation is implicit in keeping these secrets. Those are my words, not not Connor's. Who was Ellsberg to override so many important leaders in our country? Why did he even wonder why these secrets were being kept? This debate is not new. It famously arose during the context of the Nuremberg trials, when many Germans used the defense that they were just following orders. In fact, Adolf Eichmann famously used that argument when he asked to have his sentence appealed. And there are others. For example, the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Yes, I have my little notes. Also, that was also the reason given by the soldiers who performed the massacre, that they were just following orders, and in fact they were. And I've given you a link to a very interesting video if you don't know much about that incident in our history. It's really a tragic and embarrassing and shameful incident in our history, and we have a lot of those, but we keep them out of our history books for some reason. I just wonder why. Anyway, if you're interested, I've given you a link, and it is an article from the, and also an article from the UMKC library called Unjust War and a Soldier's Moral Dilemma. And that's just one academic's look at whether soldiers have a right to disobey orders. And I'd like to also give you a quote from Winston Churchill, who said, "A country without a conscience is a country without a soul, and a country without a soul is a country that cannot survive." Winston Churchill. Okay, now, I also am going to give you, in the stuff below this video, a section out of the federal regulations that happens to be an oath that all federal employees are still required to take. And you can read it, and I give it to you because Daniel Ellsberg obviously breached this oath. And it goes with the whole conversation of do his principles override his duties to his job, to his employer, and so forth. And lastly, this is really a fast one. I'm only at 7.5 minutes. Matthew noted that Ellsberg worked for the government, whereas Assange didn't, and that is a really good point. And actually, for me, that raises one more issue, which is what principles, if any, should govern an Australian's ethical approach to releasing information about American government and officials. It's not treason exactly, because he's not an American citizen. What, if anything, is it? I haven't even given a whole lot of thought to this, but I'm trying to ask myself whether Assange has any moral obligation to America at all. That is a good one, and maybe I'll give extra credit for anybody who wants to grapple with that. That's it, folks. This is Sunday. I am in the middle of grading week 8, but I did an ethical thing this weekend I'll share with you. I actually met a woman who has been living on the streets for 2 years. She happened to have a really cute dog. As I was walking out of Walgreens, I saw her dog before I saw her, and I then saw her and asked her if I could pet her dog, and one thing led to another. We struck up a conversation, and I learned that she had been on the streets for 2 years due to a domestic violence situation. And after, I don't know, it wasn't intentional, but I do some animal rescue, and the animal rescue community actually has a woman who lives somewhere outside of Phoenix who's in her 70s and was looking for a helper bee to move onto her property into a mobile home that she has on her property and help her work alongside with her in the rescue. And just weirdly, this homeless woman that I met is into rescue. And so she's been on the streets for 2 years running away from domestic violence from an ex-husband who she's afraid of. And I was able to connect her with this woman in a completely different town outside of this one, where she will feel more safe and she can work on rescue stuff, which is what she wants. And so I spent my day driving her and her stuff up to this little community. and leaving her there, and I did not get all of my work done today. So forgive me, but I chose this woman's well-being over finishing grading week 8, but hopefully I will get to that tomorrow or Tuesday. So anyway, 10 minutes. I'm doing great, and I hope that you guys had a great weekend, and I will see you on the boards.